Welcome to Catholic Breakfast. My name is Andrew Starbuck, and today we're going to be talking about dealing with racism. Father, so obviously racism is in the news today, social media, it just seems to be all over the place. So how do we deal with racism today?
It made me go back to Martin Luther King's letter from a Birmingham jail. And he says in there, there's a 4-step process to dealing with an evil like racism. The first one is you gather facts. The second one is a negotiation or conversation. The third one is, the one I'll say a word about in a second, is self-purification. And then finally, action. So what most people do now is we see the evil of racism and we just act quickly against the injustice. But if you want to be effective in responding to it, you can't just jump to action. So the third step, I think, is the hardest, but in some ways the most crucial. Martin Luther King called it self-purification, which means that having gathered data about what's going on, entered into conversation and dialogue, now to get ready to take action, you have to purify yourself of things like anger, things like sort of ego. Because look, we all know if you see something as unjust as racism, there's going to be a tendency to kind of feed that anger and act out of anger and not act out of a desire for justice.
Basically, it's like a doctor walking into a room and giving a diagnosis, just looking at the patient and not actually studying their chart or doing anything with it, just jumping right to action.
Right, yeah, maybe to your analogy, maybe the doctor sees someone has symptoms and he has a family member who's got a similar symptom, or he just hates that sickness so bad, so now he might overreact. Have you heard of Mr. Daryl Davis? He was in like kind of social media lately, but anyway, he's an African-American fella who has had incredible success at helping members of the Ku Klux Klan. He's had a success with changing people's minds who are in that group. And the way he did it is through friendships. He would go up to someone in that group and he would say, "Why do you hate me if you don't even know me?" And instead of trying to get them to change, what he would do is build a relationship, have conversation. And eventually, over time, that dialogue would lead to some fruit. But here's the point. Imagine the self-purification that Mr. Davis needed to go into those very hostile environments, to actually build friendships with people who have really, really damaging and frankly very evil notions. I can't imagine the kind of self-purification that would require. Every human being has a brother, right? We're one human family. And so I think what Jesus' advice there is you go to your brother with all of the psychological difficulty of that, and you recognize he's your brother, and you bring your complaint, your concern to him, recognizing though that it has to be done in a relationship, recognizing someone else's human dignity. And then you can actually get somewhere. You might not, right?
Right.
But at least you're not just reacting emotionally, and you're doing it in a way that actually may be successful. Whether it's facing the evil of racism, or even other evils in family life, or at work, or in relationships. You can't just react. You've got to be willing to purify your own heart and mind in order to act more effectively.
Well, I think it's a great way to actually start that dialogue, start that discussion, and get working on, healing the rifts that racism has caused in our culture today. Thanks a lot, Father Muir, for your perspective, and thanks everyone for hanging out with us today here at Catholic Breakfast.